What if the man everyone ignored on the street corner was actually the greatest biological miracle of the 21st century? For 11 long years, Elias sat upon a crate, his weathered hands coaxing a mournful, golden light from the strings of his mahogany cello. He lived in a world of vibration and echoes, where the rumble of the subway was a deep bass note, and the laughter of children felt like a bright staccato rhythm. To the rushing commuters, he was just another part of the urban landscape, as static as a lamppost. But across the street, nestled in the corner of a quiet cafe, someone was watching with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Dr. Sabina Vance adjusted her glasses, her eyes never leaving the screen of her portable neural scanner as it flared with impossible, swirling colors. Sabina had been a neuroscientist for 20 years, but she had never seen a brain map quite like the one belonging to the blind cellist. The data showed that Elias was not just hearing the music. His visual cortex was firing as if he were seeing a symphony. She whispered to herself in the quiet of the morning air, "It is impossible. He is seeing the sound waves as clearly as I see this cup of coffee." Her colleague, a younger man with a messy tie, leaned in and asked, "But Sabina, how can a man without sight process light data through his ears?" Elias continued to play, his bow moving with a fluid grace that seemed to defy his aging joints and the cold morning air. He did not know that his humble corner was the focal point of a scientific revolution that would soon echo through the halls of every major university. The seasons changed outside the cafe window, yet the routine remained as steady as the pulse of a ticking clock. Sabina gathered terabytes of data, mapping the way Elias mapped the world, discovering that his brain had evolved to find beauty where others only heard noise. One afternoon, the rain began to fall in heavy, rhythmic sheets that drummed against the pavement like 1,000 tiny fingers. Elias stopped playing and tilted his head back, his voice a low, gravelly hum as he said, "The clouds are heavy today. They sound like deep purple velvet draped over the rooftops." Sabina could no longer remain a distant observer, for the data had become a story that demanded a voice. She stepped out from the cafe, her charcoal blazer darkening under the rain, and walked toward the man who had been the ghost in her laboratory for months. She stood before him for a long moment before Elias spoke without even turning his head toward her presence. He smiled gently and said, "You have been watching me for 412 days, Doctor. I hope my music has provided you with the answers you seek." Sabina gasped, her professional composure momentarily shattered by the realization that he had known of her presence all along. She leaned in and asked quietly, "How did you know I was a doctor? And how did you know exactly how long I have been here?" Elias laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering across a stone path, and he began to tune a string on his mahogany cello. He answered her with a calm certainty. "Your shoes have the precise click of a lab professional, and your scent is of sterile rooms and jasmine tea." They began to talk every day after that, a bridge forming between the world of cold data and the world of pure, unadulterated sensation. Sabina realized that Elias was not just a subject. He was a teacher who understood the human experience in a way she never could. He gestured toward the city with his bow and spoke as if describing a masterpiece in an art gallery. He told her, "Listen to the intersection, Sabina. Can you hear the blue resonance of the electric buses as they fight the red friction of the asphalt?" Sabina tried to hear what he heard, closing her eyes and letting the noise of the city wash over her like a turbulent ocean. Slowly, the chaotic sounds began to separate into distinct layers, revealing a hidden architecture of rhythm and tone that she had ignored for years. As the weeks turned into months, the research Sabina was compiling began to take on a revolutionary shape that would stun the world. She discovered that Elias's brain had repurposed its entire visual system to create an internal map of the world based solely on acoustics. She shared her findings with her board of directors, her voice trembling with a mixture of professional pride and deep personal awe. She said to them, We are looking at the proof that the human mind can rewire itself to achieve godlike perception under the right conditions. The scientific community was skeptical at first, demanding more proof and more controlled experiments to validate such a radical claim. They wanted Elias brought into the lab to be poked and prodded under the cold, sterile gaze of a dozen white-coated observers. Sabina returned to the street corner and explained the situation to Elias, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was asking. He listened patiently before he said, "I do not need their lights and wires to see, Sabina. But if it helps them hear the world, I will go." The laboratory was a stark contrast to the vibrant, noisy street where Elias had spent the last 11 years of his life. He sat in a chair surrounded by sensors, his scarred mahogany cello held close to his chest like a shield against the silence. When he finally began to play, the room seemed to dissolve, the white walls giving way to the internal landscape of his incredible mind. The monitors exploded with activity, showing neural pathways lighting up in patterns that no scientist had ever witnessed before in human history. A senior researcher whispered in disbelief as he watched the data stream across the massive glass walls of the observation room. He said to Sabina, "His brain is creating a three-dimensional rendering of the entire floor. He can see us through the resonance of his own music." The discovery was undeniable. Elias possessed a form of sensory substitution so advanced that it bordered on the supernatural. Sabina's paper was fast-tracked for publication, and the world began to wake up to the genius that had been hiding in plain sight. News crews and curious onlookers began to swarm the corner where Elias usually played, turning his sanctuary into a spectacle of flashing lights. He found himself at the center of a whirlwind of fame that he neither understood nor particularly desired for himself. Sabina tried to protect him, standing between the cameras and her friend as she directed him toward a waiting car for his safety. She whispered urgently, "Elias, come with me. The world is not ready to just let you play in peace anymore." They retreated to the quiet of her apartment, a high-rise sanctuary that overlooked the city he had mapped so perfectly in his mind. For the first time in 11 years, Elias was away from the roar of the street, and the silence felt like a heavy, suffocating blanket. He turned his sightless eyes toward Sabina and spoke with a sadness that made her heart ache for the simple life they had shared. He said softly, "The air here is empty, Sabina. There are no stories in the silence of this room, no rhythms to tell me where I am." Sabina realized that in her quest to prove his genius to the world, she had accidentally stolen the very thing that made his life beautiful. The data was a success. Her career was made, but Elias was a prisoner of his own fame in a world that only saw him as a curiosity. The discovery had rewritten the textbooks on human potential, proving that the brain could transcend physical limitations through the power of art and focused attention. But as Sabina watched Elias sitting motionless in her living room, she knew that science was secondary to the man himself. She knelt before him and took his calloused hand in hers, her voice firm with a new, selfless resolve that surprised even herself. She said to him, "Elias, I am taking you back to your corner, for the world has heard enough, and it is time for you to see again." They returned to the street in the early hours of the morning, before the crowds and the cameras could find them in the urban maze. The city was just beginning to wake, its first notes a gentle hum of street sweepers, and the distant call of a lone, waking bird. Elias sat back down on his wooden crate, the familiar texture of the wood grounding him in a reality that he had missed with every fiber of his being. He took up his cello and drew the bow across the strings, a single note that felt like the first breath of a new life. The music flooded the street, and for a moment, the entire city seemed to stop and listen to the truth that Elias was weaving through the air. Sabina stood back and watched him, smiling as he said, "Ah, there it is. The yellow song of the morning sun warming the bricks behind me. The world would never look at a street musician the same way again. nor would they underestimate the staggering hidden depths of the human spirit. Sabina's discovery lived on in the laboratories, but Elias lived on in the music, a man who saw the world in a way we could only dream of. In the end, it was never about the science or the fame, but about the connection between a man, his cello, and the unseen beauty of the universe. Elias continued to play, his eyes milky but his vision clearer than anyone who had ever walked past his humble corner of the world.